Hi, this is a small presentation about the Yoga Sutras. A very small and general one, actually. We are going to initially talk about what are the goals of this presentation, and then we prepare a couple of experiential learning options that we're going to see, and then yes, we're going to go through the structure of the Yoga Sutras and the main key points, and then hopefully, yes, to inspire a little bit of further learning. So, first of all, we are going to talk about what are the Yoga Sutras. Maybe, or probably, many of you already know them. Others, maybe they haven't found the courage to go through them because it is indeed a very kind of a in a technical or very specific language. So sometimes it can get a little bit complicated or a little bit heavy to read. So I hope with this we can make it a little bit more simple. So yeah, the Yoga Sutras. It is one of the most important books of the yoga tradition or yoga within the yoga philosophy. So they were written about 2,500 years ago by Patanjali. It is not much out there that is known about him, but yeah, all his teachings they've been collected into the Yoga Sutras book. It has been commented and interpreted many times, and because of what I've just said before, that sometimes it can feel a little bit complicated the way in which it's written, or yeah, the use of Sanskrit, things like that. So there are many commentators out there, and sometimes it's good to find the one perhaps that clicks with you. But yeah, with this work, what we are going to do is just maybe go through the main parts of the whole book, and with that maybe encourage some motivation or curiosity, like to keep learning further and then go deeper into each part or key points. And with that, basically, perhaps we can help people live a little bit better their lives, which is the intention of the Yoga Sutras in the end. Yes, in a way, you can feel that perhaps that's the intention, but it's not maybe attained so well when it's written in such a complicated way, isn't it? But there are many great books out there as well, like they can help you with understanding a little bit better. So yeah, Patanjali starts the Yoga Sutras giving the definition of yoga. For that time when yoga was starting, perhaps maybe it looked a little bit different to what it looks these days. So for him, and the roots of the yoga is of the yoga tradition is not the asana as we might think today. Yoga, the definition of yoga in the words of Patanjali, was stealing the patterning of consciousness. So here there is another concept that becomes very important, which is nirodha. And nirodha means stealing or cessation or restriction, stealing the pattern of consciousness. So in the following chapters, Patanjali will explain why that cessation is important, why stopping consciousness it is important, and what's the path to achieve the final goal of yoga, and what's that goal? What's the goal of yoga? Why do we practice it? For this explanation, for his way of taking us through this path and this revelation, it is through a small pieces of information, small sentences or unfinished sentences, unfinished pieces of information, that they are thread with each other. They are left unfinished and then continued by the next one, and the next one by the next one, and the next one by the consecutive one. So yeah, they are linked at thread with each other. There are 195 of those pieces of information, which are called sutras. There we have the Yoga Sutras. 195 sutras that are organized depending on of what they are talking about in different chapters. The chapters are called padas. So therefore we find Samadhi Pada, Samadhi, which means integration, so the chapter of integration, then the chapter of practice, Sadhana Pada, the practice of powers or accomplishments. What do we accomplish when we practice? And that's Vibhuti Pada. And then the final chapter, which is the actual end chapter, the goal of yoga is in there, is Kaivalya Pada, which means liberation or absolute freedom. Here I've prepared, that's where I said, when I mentioned I prepare a little bit of experimental learning here. I prepare basically a quiz. You can practice this one if you paste the link into a separate Explorer tab. And basically, it's just a quiz like about the main words that we've been talking about, like padas or samadhi, or this. I think is a good way, like to perhaps get familiar with those Sanskrit words that sometimes get in the way, like and make it sometimes the understanding a little bit more difficult. So, or you could go and create your own quiz. You know, the internet is full of apps or websites where you can create your own quizzes, and maybe you can do as you go along, you know, on your learning, making it create more and more, or making it bigger and bigger, adding more words, like having, and it's a way to learning, perhaps like a glossary. You know, some books they have like a glossary at the end, so you can have it handy and check, you know. But it's good if you have it, obviously, the meaning in your head, if you kind of integrate it in your learning, then it's easier to go through the reading, isn't it? So yeah, that's one option for experimental learning. So now we are gonna go and talk about the first of the chapters. The first of the padas is Samadhi Pada. Samadhi and the concept of integration, I think, is kind of the basis for understanding the whole purpose of the yoga practice. So basically, if we come back to the definition of yoga and the explanation that Patanjali gives as yoga being the cessation, stillness of consciousness, the cessation of the patterns of consciousness. I think we need to define what's consciousness. Yeah, consciousness, or sita, mentioned as sita sometimes. Consciousness is made by human experiences. Yeah, what we are conscious about, what we perceive, is made by the experiences we have in our life. Experiences that they come to us through our senses, that they come through our thoughts. Sometimes we repeatedly think about something in the same way, maybe because we are used to. Maybe they come to us through emotions, through patterns, through the ego, through human experiences. So sometimes when our consciousness, it is because our consciousness is influenced by so many things, the mind that is not quiet, that is not cool enough, identifies itself with those perceptions. We end up thinking that we are the way we feel about ourselves, that we are what we are experiencing, that we are what we are living, that we are sometimes the consequences of our actions, or that we are our actions. Um, so it is very important that the mind is calm to differentiate between what we are and what we experience in our bodies, in our minds. So it is through the practice of yogic discipline that that we can actually see, yeah, this. We can see ourselves as somebody observing those experiences, as somebody observing the mind as well, and eventually we can see unity or oneness between that person watching, the observer, and the person that is watched, or that part of us that is being observed. So that's where integration happens. And why is important that integration, that stealing the patterns of consciousness? Because when that doesn't happen, when we are afflicted by thinking that we are what we are feeling, what we are sensing, what we are experiencing, that's where suffering happens. That's when we don't see clearly who we are. And so by calming the mind, by seeing clearly and differentiating between the seer and the seen, and finding ourselves behind all that, that observer of everything, there we can find our true nature, the nature that is actually found somewhere else as well, that is found sometimes in the wall, that purity unaffected by external objects. So that's why it says, through the practice of yogic discipline, the patterns of consciousness and its afflictions subside. Only the essential nature of the object shines forth as its formless integration arises. This integration we are talking about all the time, that's samadhi. So yeah, that's what's about the first chapter, samadhi, the importance of samadhi. The next chapter is sadhana, sadhana pada. Sadhana means practice. Practice of what? Practice of something that we need to do to get to that samadhi and even farther. So this yoga of practice is called Kriya yoga, the yoga of action. What do we need to do? What's our actions? How are our actions need to be? We need to practice the 8 limbs of yoga. Here I classified the 8 limbs in 3 groups, which are tapas, the energy of restraint, and that includes the practice of the yamas, the external disciplines, the niyamas, internal disciplines, asana, the postures for meditation, pranayama, breath regulation. All those are ways of restraining the breath, restraining movement, restraining ourselves from doing certain negative things for ourselves. So, or thinking. Then is self-study, study of the self. And then that includes pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses, in a way as a way to separate ourselves from our senses, and see what are the senses and what is actually us. And then dharana, concentration, and then we've got also meditative absorption and samadhi, integration again. the practice of these 8 limbs. Obviously, they've just been mentioned here, but we can go through all the yamas, all the niyamas. But the scope of this presentation is not possible for that. But we'll see maybe later on ways in which we can go perhaps deeper on this learning. So then the next pada or chapter is Vibhuti pada. Vibhuti means powers, and those are the qualities or the powers, the abilities that the yogi practitioner can obtain through practice. This yogi, the yogi who actually has an integrated body, mind, and soul, will have a mind free of weaknesses such as pride, anger, desire, greed, or envy. Yeah, when that integration happens, when that oneness is found within ourselves and equally found anywhere else in the world, in others, in nature, then there is no place for anger or jealousy or pride or envy. A mind as such spreads happiness and friendliness to all. So the practitioner, the sadhaka, is called the yogi. The sadhaka might get confused though when gets to that point, thinking that these powers are actually the goal. That's it. That's the goal of yoga, like feeling this way, feeling this oneness. However, Patanjali encourages the sadhaka to continue practicing, because perseverance and practice will lead to the real goal, which is kaivalya. And kaivalya is the absolute freedom. Kaivalya is the last chapter of the last pada and means liberation, emancipation. The sadhaka will move in the world without being personally involved in it, above all gunas of nature. And finally, because the gunas is another kind of a tricky word, I just wanted to explain a little bit. Gunas are qualities of energy which are present in all objects and all beings in nature. Sometimes one one of the gunas is more dominant than the others. They are kind of fluctuant. They can be altered. So these gunas are tamasic, which is darkness or chaos or inertia, or rajasic, which is vibrancy or activity or passion, and or luminosity, or sattvic, like purity or harmony. Sometimes it depends on the state of where we are or something is. It is more of one or the other, and it can be affected. So it can be changed, modified. So the yogi practitioner that achieves kaivalya moves freely in the world without being attached to all this. He or she can experience all these qualities, but it doesn't get attached to them. So, I guess, uh, yeah, I guess it's that. So, where I've suggested as experiential learning in this presentation, it is perhaps creating like I think for me it would be very useful, and it would be great as well, like if this could have been done, like maybe it could be done like in a group, to kind of create more commitment to the task, creating like a bullet point journal. I've created here, I divided it in 4 months, and perhaps focusing 1 week of each month in a certain topic. Like, for example, I've written here January, week 1 and 2, reflect and journal on on one different jama every day of the week. So Monday, perhaps we could go through Ahimsa, Tuesday, Satya, Wednesday, Asteya. So one yama every day. And then perhaps on week 3 and 4, we compare one asana to one pranayama technique each different day, and then maybe reflect on why we make that choice, why we pair those two specifically. Then we can create some prompt as well on the journal, like for example thinking which yamas or niyamas are perhaps resulting more difficult to practice off the mat, because yoga, it is not to practice just on the mat, also off the mat. So how do you practice them, and how do you practice them on the mat as well? So the options, where are the options we come up with, like to put this into practice in our daily lives. And in February, for example, we could focus it on the niyamas. Every day of the week, we can talk about purity, saucha, or santosha, or tapas, or surrender to a greater essence. Then March, we can go through self-study. We can focus, for example, on the limb of pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, and see what happens. We could watch perhaps on Monday masterclass about how to actually put pratyahara in practice, get some ideas from other people, how to practice idriya pratyahara, or karma pratyahara, or mono pratyahara. I've pasted here some options for masterclasses I found, with some ideas as well. And then in April, for example, we could continue with self-study. In this case, we could watch Dharana masterclass. On week 1, we can meditate, focusing on one area around one, like deepening or sharpening the focus of meditation. First, starting with an area around an object, but then focus on maybe on week 2, practice every day, meditating on one object specifically. Then try to practice it off the mat, focusing on one thing at a time. And then maybe week 4, perhaps practice using mantras. That's basically, my basic introduction of the structure of the Yoga Sutras and the main concepts, and some ideas to maybe encourage or motivate deeper studying. A review. We are going to do now a review of the whole thing. So the relevance of these 3 teachings, the relevance of the teachings that I've done today with this presentation. Well, we try, as I said a few times, to give a general small summarized introduction of the sutras and its structure, and hopefully with the idea to entice some curiosity to learn deeper. I've suggested a few practical applications of the teachings, organizing learning through the creation of a journal or bullet point journal to distribute the different aspects of the 8 limbs and guarantee a real application on daily life. And also, yes, it'd be great to do it as a group, creating a group work to meet every week, if it's not possible every day, probably it's too much, but meet every week to discuss what we've learned, what we've done, and learn from each other as well, and share different experiences. This will be the moment now to offer some Q&A, which, because this is done on my own time, and then you will watch like a replay. I don't have anybody here with me at the moment. It is difficult to answer any question, but I will try to upload it on my site, and perhaps there one day I will get some questions about it, and maybe somebody, it'd be great, somebody with the intention perhaps to join me and do this group work or the journaling together. And so it'd be great to know about what you think about this, and I hope it helped you. Here, a little note about biography. I've based the presentation on the Yoga Sutras with the commentaries made by Iyengar, and also the book called The Wisdom of Yoga by Stephen Cope, which I love. Yeah, I've read also the one he made about the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, how's it called that book? But when Stephen Covey, if you find him online, he's got great books, like everything written in a very simple way and very, very also engaging. You just want to read more and more, which is sometimes something unusual with this type of literature. So yes, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. I've got an email here in case you want to reach me and give me some feedback. Um, and yes, thank you for listening. Bye.